What's up guys, Filterless here. Today we're going to be taking a look at 9 games. We're starting with Crysis, and we are seeing a slight improvement with BIOS 336, so we're going to be comparing it to 335, and we're using medium settings on Crysis. And you can see here we have BIOS 335 on the left and BIOS 336 on the right, and we are seeing a slight improvement in those averages here. Another thing I want to point out, I'm going to fast forward a little bit, but the frame time graph, if we take a look right here, is a bit smoother over here on the right, especially when he looks down. So if we pause right here, you can see it just looks like it might be a bit more smooth and even right here, and this is at 12 watts up here. So if you look right here where the watts are, we're going to do 12 watts 900p, then 15 watts 900p, and then 30 watts 900p. So all these are run at 900p, and we're just changing the watts from 12 to 15 to 30. And here's the 15 watt benchmark running. I also have a chart at the end of each game just to show all 3 of these tests, and you can see here it's really close and pretty much identical on Crysis at 15 watts. Going up to 30, we're getting a great frame rate on both of them and pretty stable. And so with Crysis, it's extremely close. Here's the chart. We got 12 watts. It's only 1 FPS difference. We got the same at 15 watts. And then at 30 watts, the older BIOS actually got 1 FPS higher for those averages. Moving on to Cyberpunk, we're running the medium quality preset and kicking things off here at 12 watts. It is close, but we're getting right at 1 FPS more, and the frame time graph is looking pretty close in stability. And you can see here at the end, we actually got a few spikes here on 336, but still within margin of error, and this is at 12 watts. Now at 15 watts, one thing I did notice, the temperatures do seem to be less. That could just be my room temperature though, because the first set of benchmarks was run last night and the second set was run today. So it could just be the room temperature difference here. And look at the frame rate. We're really close on both of these. At 30 watts, pretty much the same thing again. Actually, if you go back here, you can see the BIOS 335 was pulling slightly ahead. So for the final chart, we got 1 additional FPS at 12 watts. Same thing with 15 watts on the new BIOS, and then pretty much a tie at 30 watts. Now on to the biggest difference. This was pretty surprising, and the reason I think we're getting such a big FPS gap here is they might have optimized the CPU a little bit. This game uses the CPU more than just about any other game I test for the most part. You can see here approaching over 50-60%. If we go back right there, it just hit like 64 for a second. So that could definitely be part of it, and you can even see the GPU usage seems to be going higher. So maybe they've optimized the performance of the CPU, and that's allowing it right here to be almost 10 FPS difference at 12 watts. And here at 15 watts, you can see we're getting about 84 to 92, bumping it up to 30 watts, and we're seeing almost 10 FPS. We're at 123, 132. And in Doom, we saw a really nice bump on 336, which is in orange. You can see here 62 FPS, 88, 123. Both of them are playable, but it's always nice to get even more performance out of the Ally. Now moving on to Dying Light, and right off the bat, you can see it's a little bit higher on 335, just about 1 FPS. And even if we look right here, this could be something with Windows, but the stability right here is definitely not as smooth. So let's go ahead and fast forward this 12 watt and see if we see anything else in this frame time graph. And besides this spike right here that happens on both of them, even though it's a little bit higher on the left, not too much difference. And by the time we're ending this, it's actually 1 FPS higher on 336. Then here we are at 15 watts, once again, just about 1 FPS difference, and the frame time graph, the 1%, 0.1s are all pretty close. At 30 watts, almost identical. You can see 48 for the 1%, 50, 49, 50, and basically 62 for the average. And overall, we basically got 1 additional FPS on the new BIOS. I feel like Asus has optimized it pretty well, but it's still nice to see just a slight improvement like we're seeing. Here we are on Forza Horizon 5, and I did notice a little bit of difference in this frame time graph. It's actually smoother on the new BIOS. So here, fast forward a little bit, and if you look right here, you can just see there's a little more noise. This is something you would not even notice in the game, but it's still happening, so it is a little more stable over here on the new BIOS. Then at 15 watts, looks pretty close in the frame time, but we are getting about 2 additional FPS right here for the average. And then here at 30 watts, almost identical performance, getting 78 for the average. The 1% and 0.1s are also extremely close. So taking a look at the chart, you can see we did a bit better at the lower watt range, and then it pretty much leveled off at 30 watts being about the same. Like I said, that stability we saw though, that is a slight improvement. Maybe not something you would see, but it's still there. Next we have GTA 5, and it is ever so slightly smoother in that frame time graph. If I fast forward here and you look at both, this one is just slightly smoother, more steady line. It's very minor though. Once again, something you probably wouldn't notice. And we are getting about 1 additional FPS at the 12 watt range. Then here at 15 watts, once again, it's really close, and BIOS 335 is actually ahead by about 2 FPS for the averages now. Then jumping over to 30 watts, and it is 1 FPS difference or so not a huge change. So taking a look at the chart, you can see at the lower watt range, it was about 1 FPS difference in favor of 336. Then at 15 watts and 30 watts, we got slightly more performance on BIOS 335. Definitely within margin of error though, you're not really going to notice this when you're playing. Next we have Metro Exodus, and I'm going to show y'all how I go through the footage. I'm usually actually running it around this speed right here. So I'm looking at the frame time graph, looking to see if there's any weird hiccups or anything. And if there are, I'll just rewind, take a look at it again and see if I'm noticing any differences. And then I'll rerun the test if there's some anomaly that doesn't seem right, just to make sure that I'm getting the most accurate results possible. And here you can see we're getting a little bump on BIOS 336 at 12 watts. You can see 34, 32, and overall the frame time graph is pretty close. Then at 15 watts, you can see the frame time graph has leveled off. I definitely would recommend using more than 12 watts most of the time, just for the extra smoothness that you're going to get. And here we're also getting another 1 to 2 additional FPS and a little bit more stability, as you can see in the 1% and 0.1s. And then here at 30 watts, it's also going to be extremely close between both of them. Jumping over to the chart, we can see we got 2 additional FPS at the lower watt range and 2 additional FPS at 15 watts. And then just 1 additional at 30. So overall, just that slight improvement that we've been seeing on most of these games. Next, we have Resident Evil 4. We're just running the balance preset. And if you're interested in the settings that uses, here they are right here. You can just pause the video. And here at 12 watts, 900p, you can see the frame rate is not very good. Neither is the frame time graph on either one of them. I would say BIOS 336 is actually still maybe a little bit smoother, but definitely not a frame rate you'd want to play it at. But I still wanted to test it at this lower watt range. You can see we're getting about 22 on both. At 15 watts, we do hit that 30 FPS, and we're getting slightly higher on 336. The frame time graph is looking pretty close. If we fast forward here, you can see almost identical. Then at 30 watts, we have hit the 40 FPS range. So very playable and an enjoyable experience, especially at this 900p, to be able to hit that 40 on balance. And this is without FSR, so the image actually looks really good on the Ally when playing it like this. And so wrapping up this chart, really close, we got 1 additional FPS at 15 watts on the new BIOS, but the rest were pretty much tied for the averages. Then for Skyrim, we are just running the medium preset here, and I usually run up the mountain. This time I decided to run down the mountain, so I'm going to fast forward just a little bit, and we can see almost no difference, just about 1 FPS additional on BIOS 336. And at 15 watts, it's pretty much the same. You can see we're getting about 1 additional FPS again. Then at 30 watts, it's even closer, but you can occasionally see it's about 1 FPS higher on 336 once again. Frame time graph is looking amazing, perfectly smooth pretty much on both of them. Taking a look at the chart, the lower wattage, we got 2 additional FPS on the new BIOS, but just 1 on 15 watts and 30 watts. And I wanted to show you all quickly how to get the BIOS. You're going to click on the start menu button, type in my Asus. Once you have that open, you're going to go to the left to the system update, click on that. And then I actually did not see the update in here under essentials. Even when I click check for updates, it just shows completed, but the BIOS isn't installed. So we want to click on the latest tab up at the top. And then you'll see it up here at the very top where it has BIOS update for Windows. And you can see over here, it shows the 336. And you just need to click the little blue arrow to download it. It's going to show you the prompt you're going to get when it restarts. So just click on confirm. And then I'm going to save it to the desktop. And then you'll see there's a little folder icon here. We can just click on that to open it. And then there's the BIOS update. We could also close out of this. You'll see it right there on the desktop as well. Then we just need to double click on it to run it. Then you're going to click OK. Just going to click on next. I accept, install, next. And then we click install. That's going to pop up to restart the computer, and you're going to want to make sure you're connected to a power source for this BIOS update. So just click on finish whenever you're connected to power. Then you should see this screen right here, and we just need to click on the yes button. And then you're going to see this screen right here that says warning, BIOS upgrade is in progress. Do not turn it off. And this might take a little while, and then it should automatically restart once it's done. Anyway, that pretty much wraps it up for this video. They're extremely close, so go ahead and upgrade to 336 because 334, 335 were basically identical. So 336 is giving a slight performance bump. I made these more for informational purposes, just so you know you can upgrade. Most of the time there hasn't been any issues on these latest BIOS. It seems like Asus has it nailed down, but it's still definitely good to check. If you did enjoy the video, consider hitting the like and sub button, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.